Hey, good morning. Welcome to Bayside. Say welcome to Bayside.
Welcome to Bayside.
My name's Cody. I'm one of the pastors here. Happy Father's Day. It is so good to be with you guys. If you're online, which you are right now, welcome. We want this to be a place where we worship Jesus, get connected, and take action on what God is already at work doing here in this neighborhood. I'm here with a very special guest, Evie Bracey, my little 3-year-old. Say hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Right here. Say hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
She is a goofy little girl, and we love her so much. We want to let you know, if you're a parent or a family member that has kids, we want you to know we've got an upcoming camp that we love for you to know about and come to. July 25th to 29th. It is our kids camp. It is our way for this summer of getting all of our students here in this area and also this church together, learning about Jesus together, having a blast together. You don't want to miss it. So you'll start to see a lot more information about that July 25th to the 29th. Do not miss it. We also have beach baptisms coming August 22nd. So sign up for those things. But it's Father's Day. We're very happy. We're very excited. Evie, have you got something fun cooked for me tonight? No? Okay. Well, anyway, happy Father's Day. We love you. We'll start service here in a little bit. Can't wait to worship alongside you. Have a good day. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Wait.
Good morning and welcome to Bayside. My name is Stephanie. I'm one of the pastors here at Bayside, and we're so glad that you're here to worship with us this morning. Whether you're a regular attender or you're visiting, welcome to Bayside. We would love the chance to be able to connect with you, whether you're online or you're in person this morning. I want to invite you to let us know that you're worshiping with us. If you're online, give us a little hand raise in the comments section, or tell us, I'm here worshiping today. Tell us where you're worshiping from. And then if you're in person, I want to invite you to grab that Connect card in the pew that's right in front of you and take just a few minutes to fill that out. You can include your email address. We would love to send you a little information about the church. And if you're visiting, I want to invite you to bring that Connect card to the welcome stand. We would love to meet you and have a gift for you. You can also submit your prayer request right there on that Connect card as well. If you're watching online, feel free to submit your prayer requests right there in the comments section, or you can also send us a private message as well. And then if you would like to give this morning, there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can give online by going directly to our website at baysidechurch.net. You can also give through our church app, Bayside Church SH. Or if you're here in person, feel free to drop your offering along with your Connect card in one of those black boxes before you exit the sanctuary today. Well, parents, it's summertime, and maybe like me, you're hearing some of those common phrases from your kids like, I'm bored, or I'm hungry. So I want to invite you to sign up your kids for Kids Camp this summer. We're going to kick off Kids Camp during the 10:30 service on July 25th, and then your kids will come Monday through Thursday from 6:30 to 8:45. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to have free time, but for your kids to come and have a blast. They're going to learn about the Bible. They're going to play games. We're going to have some awesome snacks. So you can sign your kids up at baysidechurch.net right under our events tab. And you know, this event, this kids camp, is not actually possible without the help of our volunteers. So volunteers, we need you to register and come have fun with the kids. Join our volunteer team by going to that same registration link at baysidechurch.net under the events tab. Well, I also want to let you know that we have a beach baptism coming up on August 22nd. And if baptism is your next step, we would love to celebrate with you. You can sign up for baptism by visiting our website at baysidechurch.net. You can also sign up on the church app as well. Lastly, I want to thank you for your faithful giving. For those of you that call Bayside Church home, Thank you for partnering with us financially and for your support of our student ministries. We just had our students come back from middle school camp, and we know that God has done some amazing things in the lives of those students. And so I want to thank you for your support of not just middle school camp, but also of our student ministries. For more information, I want to invite you to visit our website at baysidechurch.net, as well as our social media at Bayside Church SH. And go ahead and check out this fun video for Father's Day.
What did the squirrel say to the tree? That tree's nuts. My water bottle is really heavy. It's not actually that heavy.
Knock, knock. He's pale. No, go cows. Go cows who? No, cows go moo. Why did my dad say my water bottle's 1,000 pounds? Because it weighed 1 ton.
What makes a joke into a parent joke? When your mother or father is the punchline.
What did the queen ant say to the ant, the worker ant? I'm hungry, go get me some food.
What do you call an evil duck's eggs? Deviled eggs.
Why did the chicken cross the road? Because he had to use the bathroom.
Why do French people like to eat snails? Because they don't like fast food.
What's a doll's favorite food? Barbecue.
If the number 2 pencil is so popular, then why is it still number 2?
My dog used to chase people on a scooter. It got so bad that we had to take the scooter away.
What do you call a dog with no legs? It doesn't really matter. Either way, it's not going to come.
How does Moses make his coffee? He brews it.
Tell you a pizza joke, but it's too cheesy.
Why does the Oreo go to the dentist? To get filling.
Why does no one trust atoms? Because they make up everything.
What do sprinters eat before a race? Nothing, they just fast.
I tell you a paper joke, but it's terrible.
Why is cold water so insecure? Because it's not hot.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day.
The reason we got started in foster care is really an interesting story. Tammy had wanted to do it forever. I, not so much. I was in foster care when I was a child. I had a bad experience, and so I never wanted to bring a child into a home where they were going to have a bad experience. It wasn't until Tammy had finally convinced me to start taking the classes. I had some time off, so I couldn't say no. We went to the class, and about halfway through, the lady teaching the class brought an interesting point. She asked everybody why they wanted to be a foster parent. And I told her, I don't. There's nothing about foster care that I like, and I don't think that a child should have the same experience that I had. She brought a whole new perspective when she said, you don't want to have a foster home because of your experience, but you could be one good foster home. And then I started to think that yes, we could actually make a difference. We could maybe change one child's life by opening our home and having a good home and teaching kids how to love and care for one another.
In my eyes, foster care is like Jesus. Jesus was in foster care to me. I mean, he was chosen. God chose us to take care of his children. And that's really how I feel about foster care. I feel like I was the chosen one, not the children. I feel like those are God's children, and he chose us to be their parents.
What I've learned about love is love looks different to everybody. To a child, each child, it looks differently. So some kids, love looks like a pat on the back. Some kids, love looks like, congratulations, you did a good job. And so there's a lot of different ways to express love, and just to see the joy in a child when they actually experience love and somebody unconditionally loving them, even when they're wrong, and being able to take the time to sit down and talk to them. When I was a kid, I didn't have anybody to sit down and talk to and ask difficult questions and things like that. And so I try to sit down with my kids and explain to them all the difficult questions. You can ask me anything. You may not like what I have to say, but at least you'll know where I stand. After doing it now for, years, and having tons of kids come in and out of the house, it's really been a blessing. And God has blessed me, Tammy, our whole family. And I never even wanted kids when I was a kid. And now, we have adopted 4, and Tammy has 2 boys, and so now technically I have 6 kids, and countless other foster kids who I've fathered, through the years. And I had one child who came back years after being with us. We hadn't spoke to him, and he comes back and he said he had a child, and he reached out to us and he said, if I'm a bad dad now, it's not because I didn't know how to be a good dad, because you taught me to be a good dad. And that really means a lot.
God's love is never ending. No matter what you do, what you say, what you choose, I feel like He will always love you. And if you allow Him to love you, I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's a lot of children's problem, is they don't feel like they deserve to be loved. And God and a father and a mother, nobody feels like they deserve to be loved at times. And I think with foster children, it's a big deal. And I think with God and love, it will never end. He will always love you. So that's what I've learned. No matter my mistakes I make as being a parent or as being a person, He will always love me.
Good morning, Bayside Church. Yes. Wonderful, powerful story. Thank you, Dave and Tammy Crum, for sharing that powerful story that serves as something of a preface for what I'm going to be talking to you about this morning as we continue our One Another series, and today's topic is Love One Another. I'm glad I got that one. Love one another. Just to also extend to you dads a word of a happy Father's Day. But it's been great being a father, but I have a double blessing. I'm a father, but I'm also a grandfather. A grandfather of 5, and I have to say, it's really grand. In fact, had Pam and I known that being grandparents was going to be so grand, we'd have just skipped the kids, gone straight to the grandkids. Grandkids go home. In fact, one of the I read this little poem that just burned itself into my brain when I read it, and it had to have been written by a grandparent, and it goes as follows: I've seen the lights of Paris, I've seen the lights of Rome, but the most beautiful lights in all the world are the tail lights of my grandchildren going home. Do I hear an amen, Grandma, Grandpa? Yeah, I see some hands there. But it is good that we celebrate family. And especially it's appropriate that we talk on this day of loving one another. 2 different texts that I want to share for your reading this morning. The first one being in John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. It's Jesus who speaks, and he says these words: A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And then the Apostle John in 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. Dear children, Let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. The word of the Lord. I share with you one day in my life, in my ministry. It goes back quite a few years. It was a Monday. It was early September. I was 30 years of age, and I was coming to pastor my first church. I'd been an associate prior to that for 8 years, but this is going to be the first church that I would lead. It was the First Church of God in Germantown, Ohio. Germantown, Ohio is a little German village of about 5,000 people, German heritage. And Germantown, I'd like to say, was small enough if you were a pastor of one of the churches in town, everybody knew your business. It was also large enough that if you were a pastor in town, everybody knew your business. So any way you wanted to shake it up, everybody knew my business. They knew things about me that I didn't know about me. But this was my first day, and I'm excited. I mean, this is a new ministry. It's my own church. And so I'm in the office. We still lived in Hamilton at the time. We had not sold our house. It was about an hour commute. And I'm kind of tidying up the office. It was obvious no one had been in there for some time. The floor was dirty. The shelves were dusty. There was paper. There was a variety of things just need to be gotten rid of. So I'm filling the trash can and everything, and I'm putting my books on the bookshelves. And out of my peripheral vision, I saw a body in the door. And I turned, and I saw the oldest lady in the world standing like this. And so I was kind of taken aback that, she would have that soured, hardened look on her face. So I'm trying to be friendly. I'm the new pastor and everything. And so I went over to shake her hand, and I said, "Hi, I'm Pastor Randy. I'm the new pastor here." She said, "Who? I know who you are." And she said, "What's this all about?" I had put the trash can out in the hallway because nobody came in the office. I later discovered why. But nobody came into the office to get my trash, so I just put it out there thinking that the custodian would take it, because the custodian I knew was in the building because I heard the vacuum cleaner and other signs, evidences that somebody was there cleaning. And so she said, "What's this all about?" I said, "Well, I was hoping somebody would take it and empty it." She said, "Who? I'm a member of this church." Oh, Lord, help me. "I'm a member of this church, and we have a rule around here, and that is whoever makes the mess cleans it up." Well, I knew that wasn't true. Why did we have the custodian in the building? And so, remember, I'm 30 years of age. I haven't yet learned what hills to die on, what to leave alone. And irrational thinking just kind of does something to me, and I want to combat it verbally, and which I did mistakenly. I said, "Well, I know that's not true. Why is Catherine here? Why is the custodian?" Well, I found out she's the mother of Catherine, the custodian, this meanest person in the world. And she lives in the alleyway right behind the church. And God help me, she's a member of the church. So we had this little battle. I said, "Well, I know that's not true, because why else is Catherine in the building?" And, got into this little verbal thing. And she so upset me. People who know me well will tell you that I don't get angry often, nor easily. But I had been pushed over the edge with this woman. And so we had this little verbal foray, and finally I took the trash can, and she tried to grab it from me. We had this little tug-of-war thing going on for a little while there. And so finally I wrestled it away, and I went to the basement and out the door to empty the trash can myself. And when I got outside, I looked up into the sky and said, "Lord, help me. The devil's a member of my church." I've since found out the devil goes to a lot of people's churches, but... And I remember thinking to myself, I really felt sorry for myself in that moment. I thought, what did I do wrong? This is my first day, my first church, and I find out the devil is in my church. Well, the rest of the day, I mean, my mind was all whacked out, and I was so angry. I drove the hour home. My wife greeted me at the back door with a smile on her face, ready with a hug and a kiss, and she said, "So how was your first day?" I said, "Awful. I want to quit." She said, what happened? I said, "The devil goes to our church." Well, that bothered me continually for a while, and finally, after the anger subsided, and I had a chance to think about what happened, I made a decision. And I told my wife, I said, "I'm going to make that mean woman my friend. She's the meanest, most ornery, cantankerous person that I have ever met to date, but I'm going to make her a friend." I want to make several observations about love, and that brings me to observation number one. And that is simply that love is a choice. Love is a choice. You know, if you wait till you feel love, you're probably going to wait a long time, maybe forever. It's kind of like forgiveness. Forgiveness begins with a decision and a choice that we make that I'm going to let go of the hurt and the anger. Now, it doesn't mean everything goes away. It doesn't mean you all of a sudden feel good about it. It doesn't mean that you're no longer angry about what happened. But at least you release yourself, and in releasing yourself, the prisoner that you release is self. And I've always said that forgiveness is a gift that we give to ourselves. And it's the same with love. Love begins with a choice. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist during World War II. He was confined in the German concentration camp called Auschwitz. And in the context of Auschwitz, he saw human depravity in ways that few people ever see it, where the German soldiers deprived the prisoners of virtually everything that gives meaning to life and gives you a sense of what it means to be human. Now, Freudian psychotherapy, which was predominant in that day, would say that in such a context that people would resort to animalistic behavior. They would kill each other. They would do all kinds of horrid things for a crust of bread or whatever. And that did exist. It certainly did exist. But in addition to that, in addition to what Freud said would happen, he saw something else. That art existed. That music existed. He gives an example of a concert violinist before the war, how he found 2 sticks. And from those 2 sticks, he made a make-believe violin. And for hours, he would hold the one stick to his shoulder, and with the other, he would strum that stringless violin. The only music heard was the music he heard in his head. And it gave him great joy, great pleasure. Humanitarianism also existed. There were people knowing that in doing this act that they themselves would die, who would give people their last crust of bread. There were even people who stepped forward and asked the commandant to allow them to go to the gallows instead of the person who had been found guilty of whatever petty crime it might have been, probably as simple as stealing a little crust of bread. So out of the context of this great human depravity, such as has perhaps never been known before, or rarely known, he came to these conclusions. You can strip a human being of everything that gives purpose and meaning and dignity to life, but one thing. There is one thing that no one can take from us, and that is this: our power to choose how we will respond to any given situation. The greatest of freedoms, yes, the greatest of freedoms, the greatest power that we have is the power to choose how we will respond to any given situation. So the change in attitude and to go, I've discovered also that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's indifference. And the last place you want to go or be is indifferent towards another human being. Well, I don't know that I actually hated this woman. Her name is Ethel. I don't know that I actually hated this woman, but I wasn't too far away. And so the fact that I had such strong negative feelings towards her told me they can change. And it begins with a choice. And that day I told my wife, I'm going to make her my friend. Brings me to observation 2 about love. And that is that love is a verb, not a noun. It's a verb, not a noun. Again, if you think you have to feel certain things to call it love, there's a good chance, especially with cantankerous people like Ethel, you'll wait forever and you'll never get to that place. You've heard the expression, fake it till you make it. There's truth in it. And we have to fake it. We have to begin doing things. And it's amazing how when we begin to act lovingly, that somehow in the whole mix of it all, that God does a transformative thing, and where we move from a position of hatred to a position of love. Like I said, she was a crusty old woman. As I got to know her, I found out she was from eastern Kentucky. From the hills of eastern Kentucky. That says something to a lot of us already. But she grew up, she didn't have much in the way of formal education. She grew up on a tobacco farm, spent most of her years in a tobacco farm, working the tobacco farm. She also had buried 2 husbands, and as we got to know one another, she told me things that she informed me that she had never spoken to another human being. And if I had only just known her story, my attitude would have immediately changed. Because and it gave me insight to why she was so hard, why she was so crusty, why she was so cantankerous. Well, anyway, I decided I'm going to do things to love her. And so we had one car, and there were days when, I would leave the car at home so Pam could use it, and I would walk the 1.5 miles or so to church. And I always made sure that I went through the alleyway. She lived in the alley right behind the church, in the hopes of seeing her. And so when I would see her out working in the yard or in her garden or whatever, I would stop and I would spend a few minutes. Things kept evolving to where I spent more time with her. I discovered that she loved buttermilk. And there was a dairy farm not too far from us, and I knew she loved buttermilk from that dairy farm. It was raw milk, like straight from the cow kind of milk. No homogenization or that other stuff, pasteurization. And so I would stop and I would buy her a quart of buttermilk. And there was an occasion when she wanted to go to this reunion of some friends. And it wasn't too far away, and so I asked her, would you like to go? She said, I would love to go, but I don't have any way to get there. I said, I'll take you. So piece by piece, I began to do loving acts. Eventually, she invited me to have a garden space in her little garden in the backyard. So we would go out there together sometimes, and we would hoe the beans and pull the suckers off the tomato plants and everything. And then we would sit in the cool shade, drink iced tea, and talk about life. Just talk about stuff. I came to the realization that she had beneath this hard exterior, there was a warm heart and a very humorous spirit. Well, if I know somebody can take joking, it's a mistake to let me know that to start with. So I began to kind of poke at her a little bit. And one day I said to her, Ethel, you're such a cantankerous old cuss. I'm going to give you a new name. What are you going to give me? I said, I'm going to call you Polecat. For you city slickers in the South, that's equivalent to skunk. So I said, you're just a stinky old character. I'm just going to call you a Polecat, a skunk. He said, who? Takes one to know one. So she called me Polecat back. So from there on, I was not Randy, and she was not Ethel. She was Polecat, I was Polecat. The relationship continued to develop. She had a bad hip, her right hip, and she referred to it as her hind leg. I told you she's from eastern Kentucky. And she would refer to it as her hind leg. And one day I came by and she's kind of hobbling around. I said, "Hey, polecat, what's up?" And she said, "Oh, this blamed old hind leg is giving me fits again." So some of you are not going to believe that I actually said this to her, but I said, "Well, you got an axe right out here in this tool shed. Why don't you just go get the axe? We'll lay you down on the porch and I'll chop it off. And then we'll wrap you up in a blanket so you don't get blood all over the place. And I'll throw you in the trunk of my car and take you to Sears. They have a sale on hind legs this week, I read." Would be the response. But then there would be a big smile. She loved it. She loved it. One day she decided that she wanted to paint her porch. And Ethel, one of the things that she did not have was patience. And she had a son-in-law. His name was John. He was an old man himself. And she told John she wanted to get her porch painted, and John didn't get around to it when she wanted, so she decided that she was going to paint it herself. And so she got the materials. She had the paint. She had a roller and everything. And in the midst, she's on her hands and knees rolling paint on the porch floor, and that hind leg gave out on her. And so she rolls into the paint. And by the time I saw her, she had rolled around in that paint, that wet paint, trying to get up until she looked like a human paint roller. And of course, my joke was, "Why didn't you come over to the house? You could have painted my house while you had all that paint on you." Well, towards the end of our relationship, eventually, she aged and she died. But towards the end of our relationship, when we would part company, I would say to her, "I love you, polecat." And she would look at me and with a smile on her face, "And I love you too, polecat." Friends, what I'm trying to illustrate here from my own personal life is that love is a verb. Don't wait for feelings of love. We act ourselves in love, and that's what John says in 1 John. So it's not love in words, but in actions and in truth. We act in loving ways. And Jesus even said, "What good is it if you love those who love you back?" That's pretty easy. But love your enemies. Love those who despitefully use you. Love those who spit in your face and who hoot at you. And in so doing, we carry out the command of Christ. I want us to read again the verses that I read at the beginning, because in these it tells us how we are to love. Again, Jesus says in John 13, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if," notice that little word, but big word, if, it's conditional, "if you love one another." And then in 1 John chapter 3, verse 18 again, the Apostle John writes, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." There are 4 quick points that I want to lift up from these two verses. First of all, to love is a commandment, not a suggestion. Jesus doesn't say, "I suggest that you try to love." He says, "No, a new command I give you. Love one another." It's not a choice. It's something that we are commanded to do. In John 14, verse 15, Jesus said, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." How do we prove our love to him? By keeping his commandments. And one of his commandments is love one another. And how can we love him whom we have not seen when we cannot love those whom we have seen? Well, second point, we are to love each other as Jesus loves us. Again, continuing, Jesus said, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another. Well, it begs the question, how did Jesus love them? How did Jesus express his love to his disciples? First of all, and there are many things that I could say, but just let me lift up a quick 4 of them. First of all, he loved them by spending time with them. Can you imagine having 3 years to walk with the Master, the Son of God? I'm sure they couldn't fully appreciate everything, the tremendous privilege that they had. But for 3 years, they spent time with him, intimate time with him. And for our purposes, let me just say that, you know how you spell the word love? It's spelled T-I-M-E, time. Love is spelled time. There's a story from some years ago, a small community, when the circus came to town, and a certain father had promised his kids that on this particular day he was going to take them to the circus. And so he was home from work that day so he could do so, and the family's at the lunch table when the phone rang, and the mother went and answered the phone, and the kids could hear her say, "Yes, he's here. I'll get him for you." And so she came back in the kitchen and said, "It's work. They're calling you in." The kids' countenance fell. They're so disappointed. We're not going to go to the circus. But imagine their joy and amazement when they heard from the other room their dad say, "Yes, I understand, but no, I can't come in. I promised to take my kids to the circus." When the kids left to finish their preparations to go to the circus, the mother said to the dad, "The circus returns again next year." And this wise father smiled and said, "Yes, but childhood doesn't. Childhood doesn't. We have 18 or so years to pour into our children's lives, to form them, and love with our families is spelled T-I-M-E. Secondly, Jesus loved his disciples by praying for them. Who do you pray for? Who do you pray for regularity? If you're a parent, I hope you pray for your children. I hope you pray for your spouse. If you're a grandparent, I certainly hope you include your grandchildren. He loved them by praying for them. In John 17, verse 9, we read where Jesus prayed, "I pray for them. I'm not praying for the world, but those you have given me, for they are yours." I pray for them, for they are yours. A third way that Jesus loved his disciples was he loved them by patiently putting up with their pettiness. By putting up with their pettiness. And this was a petty group. If I was going to construct this worldwide enterprise to carry forth the message, I don't think I would have chosen those 12 guys. Well, I know I wouldn't have chosen those 12 guys. One of them sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. Another, Peter, denied him 3 times. When he was on the cross, when he was arrested in the garden, every one of them basically fled in fear of the Jews. So in his greatest moment of need, they forsook him. Of what value are they, or how good will they be in creating this worldwide enterprise of carrying forth the message of the gospel? You read the Gospels and you see how they fought amongst themselves about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. 2 of them, their mother even came and said to Jesus, "Couldn't one of my sons sit on your left and the other on the right?" Jesus put up with all this kind of crazy stuff. And oftentimes you can almost see him shaking his head like, "You guys just don't get it. Have I been so long with you and you still do not understand?" But he loved them in spite of their pettiness, their shallowness. And finally, the last one I mentioned, ultimately he loved them by dying for them. By dying for them. And not just for them, but for the world. Aren't we glad that he did? I would ask you the question, who would you be willing to die for? Would you die for your spouse? Would you die for your kids, your grandkids? Who would you be willing to die for? There's another story of a little boy, of a family rather. There was a 6-year-old boy, a 4-year-old little girl. The little girl had some kind of a blood disorder that eventually would kill her. Something, I'm not sure exactly the nature of it, but the family was huddled in the doctor's office one day, and the doctor said to the 6-year-old boy, your blood can save your sister. Would you be willing to give your blood so your sister can live? The little boy just thought for a moment, and there came a tremor in his face and his lips, and tears began to stream down his eyes. And after thinking about it for a few minutes, he said, "Yes, I'll give my sister my blood." The two children were placed in the same room when the blood transfer was to take place. And as the blood began to flow from the little boy's arm, he looked at the nurse standing next to him and asked this question, "How soon will I die?" He assumed, as many children might, that in giving his blood to his sister, he would lose his own life. And yet he was willing to die for her. Jesus said, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone would be willing to lay down his life for his friends." Who are you willing to die for? What are you willing to die for? Well, returning to our scriptures, there's a third point, important point in the scripture verses that I want to lift up, and that is that another way that we show our love is our love for one another is the litmus test for how the world will know that we are Jesus' disciples. How we love one another. In fact, Jesus said, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." That's the litmus test. You know what the biggest deterrent to Christianity is? It's not what we believe. It's us. It's the church. It's many believers and the infights and all the things that the world sees happening inside the church. Back in the day, there was a song that was sometimes sung in the church, and the lyrics go like this: "We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, and we pray that our unity will one day be restored, and they'll know we are Christians by our love." By our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. That's the litmus test, friends. That's the litmus test, church. That the world will know that we are Christians by the love that we have one for another. Mahatma Gandhi, who was a Hindu, who was responsible for leading the Indian people, the country of India, into freedom from the sovereignty of England, once said to a Christian, Mahatma Gandhi was himself Hindu, and he said to this Christian, he said, "You know, I love your Christ, but I don't like your Christians." We are the single biggest deterrent. It's not what we believe. It's how we live out our lives. Well, finally, love is not shown with words or speech, but with action, by doing loving things. And again, 1 John 3, we read, "Let us love not with words or speech, but with action and in truth." As a takeaway or as an action step, what can you do to act lovingly towards someone this week whom you're having trouble tolerating, whom you're having trouble loving at all? What can you do? And again, as I witness with myself, by doing loving things, somewhere along the way, God changed me. The situation did not change. She did not change, per se. It was in my heart, in my own mind, that I learned to love someone that had been so difficult to. Well, I began by making a couple observations about love. First of all, that love is a choice. Secondly, that love is a verb, not a noun. let me conclude with a third observation, and that is this being Father's Day. Of all the things we pass on to our children, the most important for them to know is of our unconditional love and acceptance. Far more than anything physically or materially that we leave them. It's for them to grow up knowing that we love them unconditionally. It's said that when our children are young, they walk on our feet. And when they get older, they walk on our hearts. How true it is. Rules are broken. Values are smashed sometimes. And yet we need in the midst of it all to let our kids know that regardless of what you do, regardless how you act, one thing you cannot change is my love for you. Remember, love is a choice. And there were days when I didn't like my kids, but I always loved them. And I pray to God that I let them know that and that I love them unconditionally. I have a friend whose life was literally a rags to riches story. He grew up in a hard-scrabble home, hard-drinking, hard-living father who was part of a generation where you didn't tolerate kids. You know, kids were to be seen but not heard. He was a man for whom none of the children could ever do anything right. And this my friend, was one. He was mischievous, and so it seemed like he got the brunt of the discipline from the dad. He never one time heard his dad say, "Son, I love you." Never one time did his father say, "I approve. I think you're doing a good job. I'm proud of you." Never did he hear these words. Well, my friend went from rags and eventually became one of the wealthiest men in the county. And we were sitting at lunch one day, and I asked him this question. I sometimes ask questions that mess with people's heads for some reason. But the question that messed with his was, do you have any idea what has motivated you to become the success that you are? What has been the driving force to get you to go from where you were to where you are today? He thought about it for a few moments, and then he began to tell me the story that basically I've just relayed to you. And as he got into the story, at one point he choked up. And with tears in his eyes, he said, "And he had the audacity to die before I got there." In that moment, a keen insight took place in him and in me as to what it was the motivating driving factor in his life was, and that is to show that his dad that he could succeed, to show that his dad that he was adequate, to show his dad that he could be somebody. I know that there are some of us here today who perhaps grew up in parallel kinds of circumstances. Maybe some of us here have carried the scars through the years of a parent or parents who never approved, who never passed on love. And the problem with not getting the blessing of our parents and the unconditional love of our parents, if we grow up in an emotional vacuum, the likelihood is that we will raise our kids in the same. And we will pass on the curse of the family, of the generations. So if there's anything that you hear that I have said this day, where regardless of where your children, your grandchildren happen to be, the ages, etc., please take from this that of all the things that you can give to them is your love and your blessing. Even to pass on a faith, a Christian faith, an emotional vacuum is not adequate. Because a faith that is passed on in an emotional vacuum can become a toxic faith. It's narrow. It's judgmental. It's enslaving rather than freeing. It's so important that we do so. As I conclude this Father's Day message, in just a few moments I'm going to have you stand and I'm going to speak words of blessing over the congregation. And after the amen, dismiss you. But at the same time, I'm going to stand here in front of the stand here. And I would like to invite any of you who would just like to be anointed with oil as a symbol of God's presence, God's blessing, and just to have prayed over you words of blessing, words of love, God's love. I would just invite you to come and to just join me here at the bottom of these steps. Everyone else can go in a few moments, but for those of you who would like to receive words of blessing, a prayer of blessing, anointing with oil, I invite you to come join with me. Let's stand together, shall we? Receive this blessing. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Go in peace. Amen.